First, it was a stadium fiasco, then a blame game. Now, will political football lead to sackings? The French Senate questioning Emmanuel Macron's interior minister after, well, first the tear gassing of Liverpool fans shut out of last Saturday's Champions League final, and then the claim that up to 40,000 English supporters showed up with forged tickets or no tickets. We'll hear Gérald Darmanin's explanation and ask whether the former chief of staff to ex-president Nicolas Sarkozy is ripe for the chop. His boss is reportedly furious, but it's not the French president's style to act on an impulse, particularly in the home stretch of a legislative elections campaign. The stakes are high for Macron. It's on his watch that France secured rights to host next year's Rugby World Cup and the Paris Olympics that will follow in 2024. So, tough questions abound. Could a transport strike on game day have been better anticipated? Was there a staffing issue? Was there a ticketing issue? Did police overreact? Are French authorities behind the times on crowd control at football matches? And why not start with a proper apology? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at the Stade de France blame game. Joining us from West Derby, England, Ian Byrne, Labour Member of Parliament for Liverpool, West Derby. Thank you for being with us.
Good afternoon.
Rodolfo Amaya is president of the Liverpool supporters in France, and which, exactly, by the way, is a reminder that Liverpool is not just the club of one city. It's a global brand.
Exactly.
The whole world remembers the days of Ian Rush.
I was very young to remember that, but yes.
Old. I'll stop now. Political scientist Mathieu Zadkowski is with us as well, Associate Research Fellow at the University of Versailles, and your remit is watching issues like policing and the such. Welcome back to the show, and welcome, as always, to sports reporter Firas El Echid. How are you?
My pleasure. I'm good.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Yet clearly the organization could have been better. Those are the words of the Interior Minister. But before we turn to Gérald Darmanin's explanation of the explanation, let's go back to the initial statement that he made earlier this week that sparked fury. Karis Garland has that story.
Sticking to his line of defense, the French Interior Minister blamed Liverpool fans' fake tickets for Saturday's chaos at the Champions League final. Without giving evidence, Gérald Darmanin said more than two-thirds of Liverpool supporters had fraudulent tickets.
There were between 30 and 40,000 more people outside the Stade de France than the stadium can seat, which is 80,000. Both with and without tickets, with fake tickets or none at all. These problems only happened with Liverpool.
On Tuesday, it was revealed the French government had been warned about fake tickets expected at the match. A letter sent by police 4 days before the final said some supporters would try to use them to access the stadium. Saturday's game between Liverpool and Real Madrid was delayed by over half an hour, with fans of the English side seen waiting in huge queues, while some, including children, were tear-gassed by police. The French Sports Ministry has ordered an investigation into the incident to be completed within 10 days, while European football's governing body has commissioned an independent inquiry.
The comprehensive review will examine decision-making, responsibility and behaviours of all entities involved in the final. Upon receipt of the findings, UEFA will evaluate the next steps.
Liverpool Football Club has slammed the treatment of fans by security forces and accused French authorities of jumping to conclusions without properly investigating.
Ian Byrne, the Interior Minister, in that testimony before the Senate earlier, doubling down, saying there were an estimated 110,000 people around the stadium before kickoff, a stadium that seats a little over 75,000. Tell us about your experience on the day.
Well, it was one of the most horrific experiences I've ever personally experienced since 1989 in Hillsborough. I've never seen a more shambolic management of fans going into the stadium. I don't think I've ever been in a more hostile atmosphere regarding the police around the stadium. And everything I see from a personal eyewitness account, I'll stand by. And I cannot connect myself with what the French Interior Minister said today. In fact, that goes far to say is I've got about as much faith in him telling the truth as they have Boris Johnson.
He said at one point that the police saved lives by using tear gas. What's your reaction?
Incredulous. I seen the police tear gas, pepper spray, children, women, Liverpool fans who were waiting for 3.5 hours to enter the stadium because of the shambolic management by stadium management, security and French police. So to actually say they saved lives, it was the Liverpool football supporters who stayed calm under immense pressure, immense provocation. It was absolutely unbelievable what we were actually witnessing and seeing. And it was only the Liverpool football supporters that prevented this from turning into a catastrophe, the equal, if not worse, than Hillsborough.
Yeah, you mentioned Hillsborough. I'll turn to Rodolfo Amaya on this. And several Liverpool fans that I've spoken with say the same thing, that because they had experienced those horrific stadium disasters in the 1980s, the Hazel and Hillsborough, they were better equipped to keep calm under what they deemed to be unnecessary provocation.
Of course, and I have to admit that was one of my first thoughts when the problem started. I have to say as well that I was in gate A, so I was not so far away from the disturbances, but it was not on my gate. I saw people jumping the fences and all that. That's, I have to admit. But when I saw people being crushed against the gates, I have to admit that I was looking for a way out. I was looking for my own way out, and I experienced bad things happening, a blade being shown. So I was a bit scared at that point. I was a bit scared of a movement of people, and that would all be crushed against fences or on the floor.
And you've been to plenty of football matches in Paris. Were you
Yes.
expecting this?
Not at all. Not at all.
How do you explain it?
I think it could be lack of organization at the first controls, because my ticket was tested and I passed.
And you had a printed ticket, or
yes, I had a printed ticket. I had it from the club directly. So we had that ticket. We passed. I saw people with fake tickets go into the gate, go into the first control, being told that the ticket's not good, turn around and go away. Some people, some English people.
Now, the people who turned around, did they
Yes.
complain or did they just accept it?
There was one situation that allowed me to say that some people knew that the tickets were fake. They tried to pass, and the tickets was returned fake. Turned around and said nothing. Most of the people, most of the English people I've seen with fake tickets protested for 30 to 45 seconds max, and it was just that, just protests. I think it's normal.
Mathieu Zakotsky, I want to get back to the issue of fake tickets in a moment. But first, let me ask you about the heavy-handedness, as described by Ian Byrne, of the police. One of the big criticisms is that in France, we tend to ban visiting fans on a whim whenever there's the whiff of a problem, that there might be trouble, and that the French aren't very good at handling football stadium events.
Well, that is correct. The tendency for the past few years, especially ever since the Yellow Vest protests and before that the terrorist attacks, was to focus the resources of the police, of law enforcement, on national security and controlling crowds during protests. And football games were considered not a priority, something secondary. So how do you reduce the resources of police officers used during a game? You just ban away fans. So for the past few years, Marseille fans were not able to go to Paris. Saint-Etienne fans were not able to go to Lyon. Plus, there was the COVID crisis. For a year and a half, you had either empty stadiums or stadiums with a very limited capacity, which means that the police lost the habit of handling those big games. But there are also more structural issues. The fact that the response was heavy-handed is not necessarily only due to the situation I just described. It's also a policing culture where you tend to go from nothing to everything. Nothing being fans piling up in a queue for hours and nothing being really done to address the issue, and then the situation goes out of control, and then we go heavy-handed and use tear gas to disperse the crowd.
Yeah, there was, according to his testimony, 2 cases that have been referred of possible disproportionate use of force. But there have been cases of police brutality, one that sparked last December, big demonstrations here in France. Is there impunity when it comes to it?
I mean, this is what the advocates of human rights and basically human rights organizations and the defender of rights, which is the ombudsman in France, tend to say, that the investigations are not led the way they should be led. And there is this national debate in France about how the National Police Inspectorate, which is the controlling body, which is the disciplinary body of the police, handles those cases. So,
but does the Interior Minister, and one that's politically ambitious, seem soft on crime if he calls out abuse?
Yeah, the thing is, he's caught between 2 things. The images, I mean, that are very clear. You see peaceful people being tear gassed. You see families being tear gassed. You see children crying. Those are very, very problematic images, and you cannot deny that. So this is why he said, I have actually started 2 investigations. So the inspectorate of the police will start 2 investigations based on those images I saw. But on the other hand, yes, there is a demand in France for security, crime control, and Gérald Darmanin based his image on being tough on crime. And also, he built this image on being, how to put that, in good terms with the police and with police unions. So, yeah, those are, I would say, contradicting tendencies here.
So, Firas Eleshi, how much of this is politics?
I can't talk a lot about politics, but I can talk about what I witnessed, because we were in the hotel that day. And from early on, from noon, you can see that something is wrong, and we're heading towards something that's not good. Let's start with why did we end up with so many...
From 12 noon?
Yeah. Why did we end up with so many Liverpool fans without tickets? Well, UEFA only provided 15,000 tickets for the Liverpool fans in a stadium that could hold up to 75,000. And then you say, well, 40,000 tickets are left for football associations. Really? And you leave the actual team and their fan base with 15,000 tickets? And this is an English team right around the corner, so people came in cars and in trains. So that's a mistake from UEFA from early on. At noon, when we were in the hotel, right next to the stadium, at every corner, you can see people selling tickets in the black market. And the police was right by, and they did absolutely nothing. So watching that, I already said, this just doesn't look right. And then they did not set the right perimeter that we're used to when we go to Stade de France. We went to concerts, we went to rugby game, L'Équipe de France. You can't get that close without a ticket. There are perimeters being set.
Yeah, what Rodolfo was just describing.
Exactly.
So problems with the first perimeter.
So that was already... it went wrong. Then the one thing that I noticed next to the stadium that was a red alert, and it was actually scary, les stadiers were understaffed.
The stewards.
The stewards. Many gates were left empty. And so from the beginning, they weren't ready. The organization was bad. And honestly, the Liverpool fans are the last to blame when it comes to all this.
And this saying that, well, it's because we only got the Champions League final late because St. Petersburg was supposed to host it.
You applied for it. This was a counterplay from Emmanuel Macron, sort of to be, I'm the leader of Europe, we're hosting this, we're taking this from Russia. But honestly, if you're not ready, don't go for it. Nobody assigned it to France. France went for it. They wanted it. So just don't do that.
All right, let's get back to this issue of the tickets. Before the French Senate earlier, the Interior Minister, Gérald Darmanin, doubling down on this claim that there were thousands upon thousands of fraudulent tickets.
Employees at the Stade de France have a chemical pen, which they use to see whether a ticket is real or fake. Staff found that they only had problems checking tickets at the entrance located next to the RER train D. This is where most English supporters came from. According to the French Football Federation, over 50% of the tickets presented were fake. The staff at the stadium say that between 57 to 70% of tickets were fake.
Ian Byrne, your reaction?
I don't recognise any of them figures. As I say, speaking from personal experience, the people I've seen trying to get into the stadium, over the walls, over the gates, were locals. There was hundreds, if not thousands, of locals who were trying to enter the stadium, which were causing havoc by the gates that we were trying to get in. So I don't recognise that. I also, when I went to the ground, we went through the first perimeter, and in the end, they stopped checking tickets. So you've got to query how the French Interior Minister is coming up with these figures, which I find unbelievable in my experience. And that's why I call for a full and independent investigation to get to the bottom of this, because what he is saying, this is the man who said at 9:30 on the day of the game, the delay was because of Liverpool fans coming late, which was a lie. So everything I've seen come out of his mouth is a back-covering exercise for his ineptitude and how he's managed the situation. And I agree completely with the journalist. If France and Paris bidded for this game, they should have been ready to police that game in a humane manner and treated Liverpool fans and Real Madrid fans not like hooligans and animals, but like human beings. And how we can talk about the policing being... well, he actually said, didn't he? He thanked the police force for what they did. No, I've never seen anything so hostile. So regarding the tickets, my personal experience was I did not see what he's saying. Speaking to lots and lots of Liverpool fans who are collating evidence now, they didn't see what he's saying. So I think the whole of Paris, the whole of France, and everybody who loves football has got to really question what your French Interior Minister is saying, because in my personal opinion, it's untrue. And I'll say it again.
Well, he also, I'm sorry to add fuel on the fire, but he also added that the Real Madrid fans, they had the electronic tickets that you show on your smartphone, and the Liverpool fans opted for paper tickets, which he says contributed to the possibility of fraud. Your thoughts?
Well, surely that's down to the initial setting up of the game through UEFA. So UEFA are going to be culpable, and the French authorities, for how it's ticketed. We have no say in paper tickets or electronic tickets. I go in every week to Liverpool Football Club on an electronic ticket. Electronic tickets would not have been a problem. If we'd have been given electronic tickets, it wouldn't have been an issue. But let me tell you, it would have made no difference, electronic or paper, to what we've seen getting into that game. The scenes, the policing, the security was down to ineptitude and a shambolic setting up. So let's lay the blame fairly where it belongs to be laid. The police and UEFA.
Mathieu Zagowski, why were there not, clearly there are not enough stewards. Why was there not enough staff at the ground?
I mean, it's hard to say. I'm not in the decision-making process here, but there was definitely a failure in predicting what was going to occur. Just to clarify things for our viewers, there are basically two main train stations, metro stations that lead to the Stade de France. You have line 13 on the north of the stadium, and that was for Real Madrid fan, and the B line, which is on the south of the stadium, which is for Liverpool fans. The issue is that the B line was on strike. So there was another option, which is a third line, the D line, which is on the west of the stadium.
Yeah, we're showing it there on the map.
There you go. That's very convenient. So the D station is on the west of the stadium, and it's a good 20-minute walk. And most of Liverpool fans due to the strike, were diverted to that line. And the issue is that seems to not have been taken into account, because the route between the D line and the stadium, there was not enough stewards. On the side of the station that was on strike, on B, you had a lot of stewards there. You had checkpoints that were empty, that you could pass in 30 seconds.
Right, and Rodolfo, this is important because you're a Parisian.
Yes.
So you know that to get to the Stade de France, it's easier via
the
RERB.
Exactly, yes,
but the Liverpool fans, in fairness to them, the ones visiting, they didn't know, and they were just following the instructions they heard in the center of town.
To be honest, I have a friend of mine who is French as well, who had exactly the same problem. He was looking for the RERB, which was on strike on Saturday. So that day, he was looking for a way to arrive to the stadium. It took RERD. So it was the best way to arrive to the stadium without having problems with the strike. And what shocks me the most on this, we knew that it was about to happen. We knew it. They knew that the RERB was going to be troubled by this strike. Why didn't they secure this passage from RERD? I mean, there were no stewards. You were talking about the stewards before, and there were no stewards to talk to us. Just to talk to us. We were waiting on the line for more than an hour, and nobody came to us to talk to us. Nobody came to us because we have no signals on our phones. So for people to tell us, I don't know, the game is delayed. Okay, people will calm down, would have calmed down, and that's it. But no, nobody said absolutely nothing.
There's a video, and I honestly had a few dark thoughts watching all this coming together. There was a video of some young locals there sort of opening the little gates right inside the stadium, the final one, and entering in the dozen. And I honestly, without Stampede and those scenes and people accessing the stadium that easy, I really thought of 2015, and I said, you know what? I mean, who says that?
What, the Paris attacks?
The terror threats.
Right.
And you look
because it was the Stade de France was among the places that was targeted. Then.
I mean, obviously it's a dark thought, but I thought, well, you know what? We're not protected, we're not secured, and we're left on our own. And that's not something you want to see in a country that's about to organize the 2024 Olympics.
Just to go on your sense, on your way. We were waiting on this queue. Again, nobody was telling us what happened. Just as a reminder, we have a big screen at the entrance of Gate A. They could have sent a message on that screen saying, much delayed. We know we have no signal, so I had to start sending text messages to have information. Anyway, so to come back to the security issue, there was a guy who was kicked off the queue because he was, trying to enter and pushing, and he was kicked off the queue by some British supporters. I know because of the exchange, one part of the exchange was in English, and the guy was responding that in French, insulting the Liverpool supporters. He went back. He came just at my side. He turned around. He was looking at something on his sleeve. I was suspicious at that point, and then he turned around. He turned around to come back to the guys and to keep on the discussions. And I saw a blade. He had a blade on his sleeve.
There was mugging events. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes,
there was plenty of mugging too for families and tickets being stolen and things like that as well.
Phones being stolen as well. There was, again, we were talking about this issue of how the people were funneled to the stadium, and it was a fiasco for some, but to read the communique of trade unions, it was a rousing success. They're calling for a repeat performance of their strike this coming Friday when France hosts Denmark in a tune-up match for the World Cup. They're saying the success of the strike during the Champions League finals, they're calling it a success, establishes concrete bargaining power for trade unions. The fiasco of May 28th generated worldwide coverage, and management carries the full responsibility of the problems of transporting fans to the Stade de France. This is a joint statement by the public transport trade unions. Ian Byrne, your reaction when you hear the unions call it a success, their strike?
Well, I think for me, the communication issue, which was outlined previously by the journalist, is absolutely spot on. If there was a strike, we weren't communicated to. We had to get from the fan park across Paris because, unfortunately, the fan park was situated a long way away from the stadium. We had absolutely no communication once we got the train into the Stade de France where to go. There was no communication about the best pathway to take. We had absolutely nothing from the authorities, which again lends into the shambolic nature of where we are. So a trade union's got every right to do what it is for its members, but surely the Parisian authorities should have acknowledged what was happening and also give Liverpool prior warning. We had no communication. We had absolutely nothing. So I wasn't even aware there was a strike until yesterday when I read the reports that there was a strike. So for me, it was a clear and utter breakdown in communication to the supporters, and that carried on right through to the stadium then.
It is, but I want to say it is.
Sorry, I want to make this point clear.
Sure.
Because it needs to be said. If Paris wants to hold these blue ribbon events, and the government have got to learn the lessons from what happened on Saturday, it's no use deflecting the blame onto Liverpool fans to save your backside as a politician. You've got to make sure that people come into your city and come into your country to a sporting event are safe. They can attend the event and they can go back well. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing now is a complete deflection of any blame. There'll be no accountability. There'll be no lessons learned. And if you don't learn lessons from what happened on Saturday, well, then that makes it a poor, I can't put into words how angry I'd be, because I never ever want any football or supporter go into that situation which we did Saturday. This lessons can now be learned, because I know the Stade de France got a long history about regards issues around the stadium. I read reports from rugby fans in Arnhem last month in January, what they'd experienced. So my call to the French authorities, the police and to government, and certainly your Interior Minister, is take the lessons, a full and independent inquiry, learn from it, and make sure whoever attends that stadium in the future is safe. Because that didn't happen on Saturday. There could have been lives lost on Saturday, and the blame fairly lies, who I've said, with the French authorities and UEFA. Learn the lessons, please.
Yeah, but Mathieu Zagorski, there is blame the Interior Minister tried to lay at the foot of Liverpool fans. We've been talking about that the whole show. But also, there's this sort of, again, the build-up to these legislative elections and this left versus right divide that we're seeing. First, it was the far right blaming the stewards because they come from working-class neighborhoods. So it's the fault of immigrants and poor people, basically. Then there's this left versus right divide over the transport strike, which is for the hiring of more drivers and against the opening of to competition for the public transport in the Paris area. Is that going to cloud the government's ability to, as Ian Byrne puts it, learn the proper lessons from this?
Obviously, we have not really been taking that path so far. I mean, Gérald Darmanin and the sports minister have been constantly putting the blame on English fans, saying that there was 30 to 40,000 English fans without tickets or with forged tickets, as we said. And the numbers don't add up. Let me be clear about that. The numbers don't add up. It's impossible that there were so many fans, so many people without tickets or with forged tickets. And I can elaborate on that if necessary. But this is definitely a political game. Yes, there is a parliamentary election in a couple weeks. And Gérald Darmanin has put himself in a very difficult situation because he made those statements very soon after the game. I mean, those numbers were announced barely a few hours after the game without any sources, without any, I would say, very clear statements about where those numbers came from. And now he can't really contradict himself. It's hard for him to contradict himself, especially in front of a senatorial, committee. So he either, can continue basically lying, let's put it very clearly, or contradict himself. And in both cases, this is very bad. And things are being discussed domestically in France. I mean, there's a lot of criticism in the French press, among French football fans, social media. Outside, it's even worse. I mean, the image of France internationally is very severely damaged.
Because we had the French president, Firas Al-Achi, who is at an EU summit, and he obviously got an earful. Because this image that Mathieu is describing, because it was reported in the press this Wednesday that he was furious with Darmanin for coming out of the gates so strong, but it doesn't look like he's going to fire him.
I don't think it's, because that will actually damage the image of Macron, because he just appointed him. But the thing is, there was a build-up to this. If we take another perspective from the French football perspective and what was happening in French football this year, it's been the worst year and the worst season in Ligue 1. The invasion of stadiums week after week, Marseille, Nice, just a week ago, Saint-Etienne. All the elements were saying that such a thing could happen, if not worse. Actually, I think with Liverpool, Real Madrid, we've avoided a much, much worse situation. So I think for them,
just to remind our viewers, Saint-Etienne relegated to second division.
Yes.
They lose the playoff, and there's a pitch invasion Sunday night. So this is after the Champions League
and a
final.
violent and a dangerous one. I think we have images here. But in the season in Ligue 1, week after week, there were just invasions, and week after week there were violence, and so we're not surprised that it came here. But failure after failure, they created a pattern throughout the year. So
why is it worse in France today than it is in England?
I think for us to explain what was happening, we got to go to the politics, and we got to go to the economy in France. And I think people are frustrated. This is obviously beyond sports, but you know, football stadiums were a place where they can express that, where they can express their frustration. And this has to be addressed, obviously. But to say that they didn't see this scenario coming, to actually come out with impulsive statements right after the game, it was a coup d'amateur. And I'm surprised that the Minister of Interior acted in such ways.
Rodolfo Maya, tell me a little bit about, again, the fans who support Liverpool here in France. Why are they supporting Liverpool?
There are many reasons, many reasons. There's a lot of people that went to Liverpool to finish their studies, and they fell in love with the city and then the club. There are people that came to the club because of the Saint-Etienne games in '77. There are people that watched the game against Real Madrid in '81 here in Paris as well. Everyone has his own reasons. Some people fell in love with Liverpool in 2005. So, yeah, we have a lot of reasons. And
today in 2022, the English Premier League is so dominant in Europe.
Definitely, yes.
And when you hear Firas describe the problems we've experienced here in France, what are your thoughts when you compare the two?
I've read something that the sport minister said. The time we had to prepare this final was short. We only knew the identity of the finalist on 4th May. Especially Liverpool, with the very specific risk their fund present us. I guess they leave 30 years ago, 30 years back in time. There's no more of these type of things in Liverpool.
If I may, I mean, this is Liverpool. This is their third final in the last 5 years. Nothing happened in Kyiv. Nothing happened in the previous finals. Nothing happened in Istanbul in 2005. This is a team that's used to finals. It's actually the opposite of what she's saying, and nothing happened elsewhere.
Exactly.
Ian Byrne, your thoughts on what's changed, and because you mentioned at the outset Hillsborough, and why has the culture changed?
The culture in the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really big question, isn't it? And obviously, you know, somehow was Hillsborough. What happened from Hillsborough was obviously the stadium redesign and the advent of the Premier League. And I think there's a really good point just being made, which is really important. You know, we've had lots of finals in the last couple of decades, Istanbul, Madrid, Kiev, which went fantastically well. There were joyous celebrations, despite some of the trials and tribulations the supporters actually had to overcome to actually get to the stadium, certainly in Istanbul. But Kiev and Madrid were magnificent football celebrations, which, of course, is what the European Cup final should be. The blue ribbon events of football in Europe. So, no issues at all. Fantastic occasions, things that'll go down long in our memories as Liverpool supporters, and which adds to why we've got such a huge worldwide fan base. So, for them to start dragging up what they dragged up to try and make excuses for what happened on Saturday is absolutely, you know, unforgivable. And for us, we've seen this before. We've seen the establishments, the political establishment, the media come against us like they did in 1989 and create a smears and lies which resonated throughout the world because we didn't have the opportunity to rebut it like we have done now, because we've got fans who are savvy, we've got social media, we've got mobile phones, we captured what actually happened on the night. So he's going to find it extremely difficult to carry on with this tissue of lies because it really will unfold really quickly. So my advice to your French Interior Minister is to hold his hands up, acknowledge the mistakes, apologise to Liverpool Football Club and its supporter base, and find out exactly what happened. Because, as I said, you've got the Rugby World Cup coming up and the Olympics, massive events for the world, and we want them to go off really well.
So Ian Byrne, just
to time in Paris. I want that reflection to be shown throughout the world, that you can actually hold events, learn the lessons. That's my advice to your politicians.
Just a question on part of the footballing culture is to travel.
Yes.
And whatever the estimates, more Liverpool fans came than their quota of seats. As was mentioned a moment ago by Rodolfo, there was that fan zone in the east of the capital to accommodate 40,000 fans. The BBC website before the match talking about the fans who went because they wanted to soak in the carnival atmosphere. Now, Real Madrid fans, very few of them traveled to Paris if they didn't have a ticket. What is it about going to the host city, even if you don't have a ticket, Ian Byrne?
I think it's what you just said, just to soak up the atmosphere. And the people that travelled with us without tickets, they wanted to go one of the great cities in the world, be involved in one of the great games in the world, and then watch the game safely within Paris, which they did. No, the people who come with our party did exactly that. They stayed in the centre of Paris and they watched the game, but they wanted to be part of the experience. And there shouldn't be anything wrong with that, with regards enjoying what Paris offers, enjoying what Madrid offers, enjoying what Kiev offered. And memories are made for life, but let's not deflect from what actually happened on Saturday, which was absolutely shambolic. So I won't be taking any lessons from the French Interior Minister, who actually blamed Jurgen Klopp for asking people to send, when Jurgen said go and enjoy Paris. No, Paris should be welcoming with open arms to Liverpool supporters, and it did. And we had a fantastic time until we got to the stadium, and as everything that's being outlined in this debate happened. So that's a deflection. There's been lots of deflections, hasn't there, over the last 4 days from the French authorities. What you shouldn't be doing is saying to people, don't visit Paris, because it's a wonderful city and we had a wonderful time. And I want to emphasise that. We had a fantastic time until we come to the stadium.
Mathieu Zagorski, you agree that you should be able to travel to Paris even if you don't have a ticket?
Last time I checked, the borders were not closed. It is legal for British citizens to travel to France. Exactly. So once again, if the French government did not want Liverpool fans without tickets to come, then you put border control and you may enter France for the 48 hours preceding the game. And you may enter French territory only if you have a ticket. If you didn't do that, you can blame people for coming and wanting to taste the atmosphere and just celebrate their team in the very city where they're playing the Champions League final.
Yeah, but if you allow me, how can you control those borders? Because we're not only talking about.
Of course you can't.
Exactly. I understand what you're saying, but as we were talking before, this is a global brand. Liverpool Football Club is a global loved club. So, for all those people traveling around the world, we had people from Australia, we had people from Iceland. So, how can you control them? We had the German people coming, we had the Spanish people coming. Yeah. How can you control them? I've been myself. Sorry, just to finish my idea. On 2019, I went to Madrid. I had no ticket. But my idea was to enjoy the atmosphere. So I went to the fan zone and I finished at a bar with my friends watching the game. And it was amazing. That was the only thing I was looking for.
I think the conversation shouldn't even go that far about traveling in and out of Paris. I think it's very simple. There was just a lack of planning around the stadium. It's that simple. The number of stewards, the perimeter, the tickets, it's just they did everything wrong at every turn, but only around the stadium.
And now, when the dust settles,
yes,
how much of this will be down to the organizers? How much of it will be down to UEFA? the city of Paris?
I'm afraid that right now in the geopolitical scene there's just bigger problems and the war, and so the UK and France cannot have this conversation go longer. And I think that next week we'll all forget about it, and I don't think that real decisions will be made, sadly, and everybody will get back to the war and that conversation.
The British ambassador in Paris has been contacted regarding what happened at the Stade de France. That's according to the sports minister. She's been testifying, the new sports minister. She said they're planning to meet over the issue next week. Ian Byrne, there's another subtext to all of this, and that is that it's the last 2 years. It's been an easy way to score points on both sides of the channel to needle a little bit post-Brexit. Your thoughts on the mood since last Saturday between France and the UK?
My focus was solely on the authorities and putting the blame fairly where it lies. To get into the Brexit debate is something which shouldn't colour this, in my opinion.
Does it colour it? My question is, does it colour it?
No, it shouldn't colour it at all. No, this should be about accountability and getting to the truth of what happened on Saturday night. Let's not get diluted by Brexit and everything around Brexit. That argument shouldn't be had. I'll be going in Parliament on Monday, making representations in the British Parliament about what happened and trying to get the truth using that as an avenue. But let's not colour it. Let's not dilute what happened on Saturday and get into that debate, because it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. We should be completely focused on getting to the truth of the events on Saturday, making sure the accountability is there. And I keep saying it, making sure that this never happens again. And supporters are never ever treated in the manner which we were treated on Saturday night. That's got to be the crux of where we need to go. And that's what I'll be doing next week in Parliament. I certainly won't be going down any sort of Brexit arguments. Absolutely nothing to do with this. And to say it's going to go away next week, it won't, because this has got to be resolved. You've got to, the accountability element is really key. We're going to be doing things in this in Liverpool about making sure that eyewitnesses' statements are put together, and we do a full and independent report on what happened, which can go then to UEFA and the government working with Liverpool Football Club, because this can never ever happen again to any other supporter, and that's really key. So I don't want to get involved in the political dimensions of the relationships.
All right, before we go, Ian Byrne, because we're running out of time, the sporting dimensions. Just a quick word on this: will you consider the season a success? You fall just shy of winning the title. You lose 1-0 in the final of the Champions League, but you do get 2 cups in England. Is it a success this season?
Huge success. I couldn't be more proud of the football club and also the supporters. It's been a magnificent season. It's been a joyous celebration of a season. We fell short by 1 point, and unfortunately on Saturday the game was immaterial. Honestly, I sat in that stadium for just, I think, 3/4 of the game, and I wasn't taking a blind bit of notice of it. All I was worried about was outside. So that European Cup will be wrote off, certainly in my memory, as an horrific experience. We'll go again next year, and as I said, the worldwide fan base that pushes us on will go again, and hopefully we'll be able to win the European Cup in far happier circumstances next year.
Rodolfo Maya?
Huge success. For me, the best example to join the Mr. MP about that is the fact that we have the images of the parade on Sunday. That parade was amazing. The city was
the streets of Liverpool.
The streets of Liverpool, and it was amazing. If that's no success, how can we call it?
I'm afraid that this generation might not win enough because they deserve more. I think at least 2 Champions Leagues and more than just 1 title of the Premier League. So Jurgen Klopp has a couple of years ahead of him, but they deserve more, and I really hope they don't pass by that, because they have the generation that can do that.
Let's hope so as well.
All right. That's certainly making Rodolfo smile. I want to thank you, Rodolfo Maya. I want to thank Firas El Eshi, Mathieu Zagrodzki, Ian Byrne for being with us from West Derby. We want to thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.